In my experience, by working closely with industry, I find as a researcher I can ask more interesting questions. I'm informed in my research by some of the challenges that firms, in my case, face. And by working closely with industry, I can get access to better data. The relationships I have with firms, relationships that are built over long periods of time, allow me to access information and to generate insights that normally you couldn't access. So let us turn to the question of how do you make sure your research has impact? We're going to hear from some leading academics and firms, all of whom have successfully collaborated and all of whom will share their ideas about how to make collaboration work.
Where organisations are looking for new ideas and new technology, they recognise that universities are a rich source to help them innovate. Your research plans will be important indicators to them of the likelihood of the success of your project. Timescales are important too. Who knows, when you attend your next networking event, you might just find the right industry collaborator to take your research forward.
I think one of the key secrets actually is to be prepared to take a risk. To go out and find out what's out there, what's going on, and let it surprise you to a certain degree. I'm quite sure that some of my other collaborators were not naturally interested in talking to the Institute for Manufacturing about maintenance systems, but they're surprised to find the value that they can derive there.
So I think there are differences of motivation. So you need to be clear about where all of the parties want to get to. So I want something that somebody in our organisation can use effectively to do a better job. Sometimes the academic parties want publications that they can put into journals to get recognition. So providing at the outset you're absolutely clear about what both parties need out of the collaboration, then there's a degree of compromise you can get so that both parties get what they need. I think the difficulty arises where you don't recognise what either party needs, or both assume that actually their direction is the primary goal and the other party is entirely secondary to the relationship. So I think providing you're clear up front, it's always worked for me.
I think there's a conflict and there's a challenge to be overcome, engaging new people. But I think new ideas are very important and they come from new participants. That said, you need to establish trust in a working relationship, and I think that's very important, and it's where established relationships, I think, facilitate progress between the two parties.
Can we have just three groups? Stand up, get into groups of three, please.
It's not every day you can get experts from IBM, Rolls-Royce, Cranfield University, Nottingham University, the EPSRC, Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Council, and the University of Cambridge together. But here we have these representatives who have been working together as part of a great example of knowledge transfer. KT Box, the toolkit for improving service operations. It's not always plain sailing. How to manage complex, sensitive, public and private information systems does need to be thought through. That's where AIM's expertise can help.
So establishing partnerships takes time, inevitably. There's a process of getting to know each other, of learning about how the other party works. It's about building relationships with the organisation, if you like. So that inevitably takes a period of time for both the university or the academics and business to work together. Then what tends to happen is two things. Often the partnerships grow, so you end up, particularly with large organisations, meeting new people in different roles, in different business units, so your network inside the organisation grows. And of course, often those people that you are working with move on to other firms, other organisations, and they will sometimes take the relationship with them, and then you end up building new collaborations with a different variety of firms.
Any tips on that sort of sensitive information, just to establish the boundaries of the relationship when you begin?
I think it's really important to be clear about what is for public consumption and what is for private consumption. So often organisations will ask you to sign non-disclosure agreements, NDAs, which protect their information. I've never had a problem publishing research work done with an organisation, providing I go back to them and say, this is what I'd like to publish, are you okay with it? And they will often review it, and they're often very sensible with their comments and critique of the work. So I think providing you manage the relationship well, it's not really an issue.
Representatives from academic institutions admit that their industry collaborators might start out with different research agendas from their own, but the issues that might cause conflicts can be ironed out. IP, or intellectual property rights, is one of those issues. Planning projects in detail, pinpointing all, are the antithesis to success in industrial academic collaborations. Clear objectives, clear goals, good communication and clear understanding are key. Representatives from government can be involved in this relationship too.
I think there's a concern that a number of companies, a number of sectors of industry do still think they can look for eureka ideas from academia. I think a number of companies have for a number of years been quite mature in their approach to seed corn investments in what we might call blue skies or long-range research. But it's still quite difficult, I think, to get a meeting of minds on the timescales involved. Industry, does continue generally to be have a much more short-term outlook than academia. Academia, there's still a great emphasis on looking for funding to pursue academic research and look for, identify work on new thinking. And there is still one of the challenges, I think, is still getting the academic people to think very carefully about applications and to really engage with industry with applications in mind.
Industry and academia working together is very important in terms of the EPSRC investment in the science base. So EPSRC, we invest money in science to benefit the UK more generally. To enable that to happen more rapidly, I think industry has to be closely engaged with academia so that the links and the transfer of the knowledge from academia to industry can happen as rapidly as possible.
So I suppose those relationships aren't just about profit, they're about societal interests, meeting the challenges of things like climate change, but also about jobs for people.
Absolutely. We say industry, I think actually I'd like to use the word users because I think it's much more broader than just industry. But yes, absolutely, it's about the movement of people as much as it is about knowledge. So it's not just about knowledge, it's about getting trained people into industry. And it's also about industry influencing the long-term research agenda. So having industry engaged, even if there's not a direct product coming from that, is really important to actually getting the maximum value out of the input of research.
What has been unique about this KT Box project is that the industrial engagement with the project has grown as the project's gone on and is peaking as the project is ending. Now, my previous experience has been quite the reverse, that there's quite a lot of interest from the industrialists at the beginning of the project, and it tends to fade away towards the latter part.
Now, we have a society or a global economy in trouble. Are there benefits in these challenges of bringing industry and academia together? What can be gained?
I think this project has really shown the value of having industrialists involved. The industrialists involved in this project have really challenged and pushed the academics. And that's been quite a unique feature in my 12 years experience. And I think it's partly the quality of the industrialists that we've had in this project, and perhaps the number of them as well, because they've been prepared, they've been prepared to challenge and say, you're not explaining that clearly, I don't understand that, that doesn't seem good, you haven't done enough in this area. And that's not been an easy process. It's not been easy for the industrialists and not easy for the academics, but I think that having some genuine interrogation of our outputs by the industrialists in this project has been the key to its success.
Academia, I think, wants, from my perspective, academia wants a place to trial their concepts, I think, with maybe one starting point, a base to do qualitative research in. So often we're looking for industrial partners to be able to trial, research, get good data. Another piece, what the industry wants, they want answers. I think they want some answers or some tools that enable them in terms of their process, their thinking, to advance their challenges here and now, but also I think there is some long term going on, but certainly they want solutions. And it's that translation from conceptual, as I see it in academia, to industrial needs here and now is sometimes problematic, because I think there's two languages being spoken. One is long term, one is short term. One is short bullet points, another is more conceptual. And it's trying to have that translation, I often see is the hardest bit.
I think the most fruitful collaborations I've had have lasted over quite long time periods. So you gradually get to know the organisation, you gradually get to know more about some of their challenges, you gradually get better access to the organisation as well. You have to bear in mind the first time you meet somebody in an organisation, they're not going to open up to you completely and tell you all of their biggest issues, all of their biggest challenges. But as you work with them, as you get to know the people, then they're much more likely to be receptive to allowing you to see bigger challenges that they might have. And in turn, that leads to more interesting research questions.